back there.
We'll figure it out, I guess. Well, how about we start at the beginning? Were you enlisted? Did you just enlist, or were you drafted?
I enlisted when I was 17 years old.
Did you know any of the boys that you enlisted with?
Yes.
Are you
There was 21 of us that left Jamestown, all 17-year-olds, on the 19th of January, 44.
Were you friends with a lot of them? Or did you know a lot of them?
We split up quite a bit when they got us an outgoing unit. So we all went different directions. However, I think there was 5 or 6 of us that landed on the Essex, on the carrier.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were on there. Bob Morgan was one of them. I don't remember Bob or not, but he was quite active. Well, around here also, he was a deputy sheriff down in Fruitford for a while. And otherwise, like I say, we went different directions aboard ship in different departments.
Right.
But we all started out as what we call deck apes, and we worked on the flight deck,
Okay.
pushing airplanes. Because the airplanes, we had 100 of them on board, but the planes, or the wings, would just partially open up and partially close.
Mm-hmm.
So the last part of it, when they got into the proper position, the ones that were working on the flight deck would grab a hold, like 6 or 7 of us would grab a hold of the wing and push up on it, and so it would lock into position.
Okay.
Then that plane would be ready for takeoff. That happened to the F-6F fighter planes, and also the TBMs, the torpedoes planes, and then the SB-2Cs, which were the dive bombers. And they all had that same feature. But when we went out there, all the airplanes there, the engines were a little bit, well, they weren't powerful enough for the load that they were about to carry.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them ditched or went off the end of the flight deck and went into the water because the engines were not powerful enough to take the load of the bombs they had on board. And years ago, when they were practicing all of this, they didn't realize how much weight those bombs weighed, like a 100-pound bomb or 200-pound or whatever. We were all the way up to 500 pounds. And that's pretty good size.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of weight there. And that plane probably had 2 or 3 of them on board. So when they come to the end of the flight deck, they just barely, we'd stand up on the bridge and keep our fingers crossed for every plane that took off.
Was there like cheers when it would take off?
Pardon?
Like you had mentioned that they go off the board, they go way down, and then it goes up like that. Would you guys cheer when they would finally take off?
They shift in second gear, I guess. Start like they're going up a hill.
Oh.
But then they would veer off to an angle quickly, because if a mishap, the other planes could keep on taking off, where some would be disabled. Or some of them just sank, pilot and all.
Oh dear.
That's the sad part. We lost a lot of good guys that way.
I couldn't imagine.
But then also they worked on the engines, and they became a larger horsepower engine, and instead of having 3 props on it, they had 4 propellers on it. That made the difference.
Huh.
So that was quite a big feat, really, because we had so much to learn, because this type of a warfare was so different from what the World War was all about. World War I. So they hadn't gotten with the program yet, so to speak. And the South Pacific was a mess, because there was about 4 or 5 different languages being spoken in Australia and the other islands in the south. They all had their own navy, they had their own ships, and when we needed them, there was no way to call them together because there was no practice or anything that we knew how to form a formation or so we would be effective. Mostly, the sad part of it was the Japs, they took full advantage of that. They just knocked us right out of the sky. And that was a bitter, bitter lesson. But we didn't know.
You had mentioned before that you did see a lot of action in the Pacific.
Yes, ma'am.
But other than that, did you have a lot of downtime where you guys really didn't see a lot of action? Like, was there times where you guys were just kind of like sailing along?
I didn't quite get that. Were we active?
Were there times where you guys weren't active? Where you were just had a lot of downtime? Where things really weren't going on?
Well, we were on what you call a watch. Here you'd call it overtime or whatever. But in our particular case, the quartermasters, we were the smallest division on board. We had 12 people in our division. And there was 4 of us that went on watch at the same time. When I say going on watch, I meant I was going to go to work. I'd go up and man my station for 4 hours up on the bridge.
Okay.
And we had our various jobs that we had to do on the bridge. And the bridge is where the captain is and where the admiral is and all of the brass is. That's where they are. They all want to be close to the captain. And it was quite a sight, really, to see some of these younger ensigns and junior officers trying to make their grade fast and do certain things, so they would be noticed, so they could advance faster and farther. We had, like I said, we had 4 of us in each division or each group. That meant there was 4 of us that went on watch at the same time. We all went up to the bridge and we took the place of 4 other people that were up on the bridge. They would leave, we would stay. The only people that stayed there otherwise were the Marines. There was 2 Marines on the pilot house, guarding the captain at all times. Another thing that a lot of people don't understand, and it took us a while to figure it all out too, is when we go, when the ship leaves port, the captain, he's in his pilot house. He doesn't leave the pilot house until the ship comes back or goes to wherever his destination is. And that could be 1 week, 2 weeks, up to 6 weeks.
Wow.
And that captain was in that one, but he could not leave that bridge. The admirals, they would come on board because they would have what they call conference calls and conferences. So the brass or your top officers from the various carriers they would pick one carrier and then they would all meet on that carrier. They'd get there by airplane or by motor whaleboat, and that's how they communicated. And then of course there were submarines out there that did a lot of that sort of thing too. But like I was, when I went up on the bridge, it took me about 6 months, I guess, or more, just to learn. I was what they call a striker. a quartermaster striker. In other words, I was going to be taught my duties that were to be taken on the bridge itself. The bridge isn't very large. There's the wheel, there's the compasses, a couple of other compasses, and enough room for 2 people to pass probably in the pilot house. And the admiral, if he was on board, he would have to come up to see the captain. Normally, the captain would go down and see see him, but during wartime, it's a different situation. Then the captain is the captain. He is the key man aboard that ship.
Mm-hmm.
And everything has to go through him. The admirals can be 2 or 4 or 5 of them, and they could have brass all the way up to their elbows, but it wouldn't make any difference. The captain was still the captain of that ship. And that was the way it was.
That's interesting.
But the captain had a seagoing stateroom, you might say, but it was never used. Beautiful, but never used. Because he had that little tiny cabin up on the bridge. It had a cot in it, and toilet facilities and so forth, and that's where he stayed.
Huh.
And when you get communications coming over from the radio from the other ships, and he would hear some of it, and if it was important enough, why we would turn the frequency to, so he would get it in his room, but it wasn't everything. So there was a lot of things that had to be done besides what the captain would authorize. So the next man in command would be the officer of the deck, officer of the day, and he would be 1 officer out of 4 from below decks. And they would all do the same thing that we did. We all went to our station. And during general quarters, we would practice that, and we would all, when the bugle went off, and we had to go to our battle stations, we would all run for our battle stations and get there as soon as we could. And the first thing we do is put our life preservers on and wait and see what's going to happen. There's one particular time that happened. We were under attack, and one of the Japs got through and dropped a 1,000-pound bomb. And it came, instead of the bomb going straight down like that, it skipped and went underneath the ship, our ship. It took us right out of the water like that.
Oh, jeez.
And we thought we were going to explode and
Yeah.
we were going to go right down to the bottom. But as it turns out, just some of the plates on the hull were sprung, where the oil and the other fuels that we had on board were stored. So those valves were turned off, so the fluids could not keep going out of the ship, and we stayed out there for 6 months that way, instead of getting repaired. But things were pretty hot. This was during Iwo Jima and Okinawa towards the end of the war. There was no time for that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of the carriers got hit several times, and they would go right back to the States, and we'd stay out there.
Really?
That's why we were out there for 2 years. The other ships would, well, we got words and names for some of us. But so that's what we did. We stayed. We had to stay on station right out there in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and we had to just go day by day and eat what rations we had. As a matter of fact, during the just before Okinawa, we went 79 consecutive days without any fuel or food brought aboard our ships. All the refrigeration and all the food that had been out there had been all used up. And so, but it was so hot out there that the other supply ships couldn't get through. They couldn't get through to us, and we couldn't get through to them. So that's the reason it was for the 79 days. But during the 79 days, we got rid of a lot of spam, I can tell you that. But the one thing to go along with that is the fact that the bread was, well, it started out as a loaf of bread. Then they would slice it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put your bread down on the table and it'd start walking across the table like this. You look down a little closer and you can see these little, about that big. They'd hatch, after being in the oven, these ovens would hatch the eggs from the various whatever we got on board, and so we had to pick the bugs out first, and then we ate what you call holy bread.
Oh gosh.
Literally that is. You're going to put some peanut butter on there, forget it.
Oh. That's no
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, that's the way it was.
Will you ever eat Spam again?
Pardon?
Will you ever eat Spam again?
Oh, yeah, I like Spam. I still
Really?
eat Spam, sure. Not
Never had
wrong.
Spam.
It's just when you get it all at once, day after day, it's a little different story. That's it.
Wow. So you had mentioned about the typhoon. What was that like, going through the storm?
Oh, the typhoon?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got a book over there on Halsey's Typhoon. That was up in the Lady Gulf. We were in the process of going to help MacArthur take and conquer the Lady Gulf area. But to get there, we got to go through this storm. And Halsey, as much as he didn't want to do it, he did it. We went right through the storm. It lasted about 4 or 5 days.
Wow.
And we lost 3 destroyers with all hands. They just rolled over and went down. We never saw them again. And that was because they lost steerage. They had no fuel, so they couldn't. Their engines were not working. The destroyers looked like submarines coming out of the water and going down. They just go down with the swell, and all you see is just a little mass. Then pretty soon the whole ship would come up. And we were about 80 or 90 foot waves out there, and we were going right through it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when you're going through it, you're working. I was on the wheel, and to steer the ship that way, because the wind is hitting probably one side of the ship, so that's pushing it. So we had to compensate for that and get the wheel going against that to hit a straight course. Because all of the ships out there might be 25, 30, or 40 ships all together going the same way, and we'd all turn at the same time. And some could turn and some could not turn. And that's where we had problems.
Mm-hmm.
But when the destroyers they were just overwhelmed. The pumps wouldn't work. They ran out of fuel. From then on, after that disastrous situation, so there was about almost 1,200 men that went down with those
Mm-hmm.
3 destroyers. And after that, ruling came out from the higher ups that the ships could not engage or be less than 50% fuel on board all the time. In other words, a lot of times when we were refueling destroyers and other ships, they'd come alongside the carriers because we had more fuel. We could what they call top them off. They'd come alongside and we'd have these huge hoses and we would give them so much fuel and they'd be able to stay out with us longer. And it took quite a long time for that to get squared away. And then the fuel part. But the thing that got me, and this goes right along with what you're talking about, that when you consider, like when we were out there was 5 groups, task groups. Each group had probably up to 8 to 10 destroyers, 4 cruisers, and probably a battle wagon. That would be one group. Task group 54-1, -2, -3, -4. And we're all out there going like so. But when the storms come, everybody had to do what they had to do. And sometimes they had to scatter, had to go apart from one another, because you're always watching out. You had to stay on station at all times, otherwise we'd be banging into each other. So that was very crucial. Then that word came out that if destroyers could not have less than 50% fuel on board at all times. That meant that they had to go a lot of times to a carrier to get topped off and get more fuel to stay within that range. And when we got up there in Iwo Jima and Okinawa, it was pretty tough because things were pretty hot. And it was hard to get fuel. But to go along with that, I just wanted to make something that a lot of people don't think about. But like here we are, way out there in the middle of the ocean. And that ocean's big.
Yeah.
Very, very big. And we're just little dots out there actually. And when you stop and think where we were and where our action was from where the different islands were around Japan, around the Philippines, the lower part of the Philippines and so forth. There's quite a distance out there. So when we had to go someplace, a lot of times we had to go top speed to get to where we were supposed to go in a hurry. But a lot of times they couldn't get fuel. The thing of it is the point I'm trying to make is that here we are, out here, we're vulnerable because we can't get fuel. That's the reason we were out there for 79 days.
Yeah.
Okay, the ships that we were supposed to meet with were over here a couple 100 miles. We were supposed to rendezvous with them, only it never happened because the weather was so bad. Well, that not only happened like then, but then there had been other typhoons that we had to go through, the same thing happened. Other ships couldn't get to help the other ships. So when you stop to consider the different ships, how many they were, that made up a task group or a group of ships that had supplies. And I say supplies, I mean salt and pepper, or potatoes, eggs, or whatever. And we just couldn't get that stuff. And that's how we, they were very particular on what kind of food we got to eat. And if we got closer to Australia, we got more of one kind of food than the other, like lamb chops. That's another story. But when you consider, here we are out here like so, and this supply ship is here, 200 miles between the two. So they go together like so, and then they get fuel. Apart from airplanes, they needed some of the planes would get wrecked, and these supply ships would have spare parts, and they would have spare pilots also. And we would meet with them, and then we'd go by submarine from one ship to the other. That's how we kept going then. But the point I'm trying to make is that when you stop this, and nobody does, you just take it for granted that there's going to be a supply ship there, because that's where you're going. You're going to go back and get supplied. Well, just think about how many supply stations there were out there across the Pacific, and how much food and how much work that was involved with each group. Yeah, they were designated, and they were pinpointed in a day for them to rendezvous out there someplace. That had all been predetermined. But when you stop and think about all those ships and how they were getting supplies, they start in Frisco or Seattle, someplace like that. They'd go out for a day or two. They'd be way out here. Another group would do the same thing, to replenish, and they keep going. So the supply would continue from the United States shores out to Japan or the Philippines or wherever we were.
Wow.
But another thing that along those lines has to do with money. When you think of a large ship, we have payday once a month if we weren't too active or too busy. We get paid, and we can go right down to our post office and send money home. You figure that one out.
Yeah.
Logistics.
That's something. Here we are in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of the Pacific, and with all these ships out there. And there's no, the large airplanes weren't existing at the time. So how does the mail get from here to here to here? You know, in a few, maybe a week or a few days.
Yeah.
Especially your money.
Yeah.
You're gonna go to the bank, go down, then the ship right next to you gets blown out to heck, and the money's gone.
Yeah.
But there's one person on board the ship that nobody knows about. And he's the one that knows and has charge of all the money in case we were hit, in case we had a problem. He was responsible for that money. I didn't know that until after the war. I often wondered how this thing worked, but we'd stand in chow line and there'd be stacks of money and everybody get paid.
How much money would you estimate that would be on a per month basis aboard a large aircraft carrier? Looking at $100,000?
There's 3,000 guys on there.
Yeah.
Multiply that by, what, $50 a person? It's rough.
Yeah.
It adds up quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But those are a lot of things that nobody ever thinks about.
You kind of
They
overlook
read in
it.
the paper, this and that and all that, but it still baffles me how we did it.
Yeah.
But we did it.
It
That's how we won the war.
So in the last interview you did, you were telling us about the plane that y'all pushed off the ship. It was kind of like a Viking funeral kind of thing. Do you remember any specific details about that day? Like what was the weather like, or what was the attitude among the
There's
ship?
a picture of it in that green book. You see it?
Yeah.
That's me standing behind the,
Mhm.
and I'm in the picture. Nobody would know it, but at that time I went up with the bugler was in our division. So he said, Pihl, come on up and go. I gotta go take care of a funeral. I said, okay, so I went with him up. We got up there to the plane, it was a TBM, a dive bomber, and then it had a bubble in it like so in the back. Well, it was, the only part of it was just the lower part, and then the remains in the ship. And the plane was full of holes. And we were under attack, we were pretty busy. So rather than try to do anything about saving that plane or anything, we're going to put it over the side. So then we had what they call a dolly, which is a huge, what do I want to call it? A dolly, a huge machine that could pick up an airplane and move it wherever they wanted to.
Okay.
And what they would do is go towards, and the picture shows it, where we went to the fantail in the back of the ship, and it just dropped the plane and the personnel that was in it over the side. Done deal, that was the end of it. That happened several times.
Really?
The saddest part was another carrier, I forget which one it was. Anyhow, one of the carriers same like ours. Oh, I got some water. But anyhow, being a quartermaster, we had charge of navigation and the flags when they had to fly, half-mast the colors, and when the anchor went down, the jack went up, and we did all those little things. And then burial at sea. Now, this one morning, we got a call from one of the other carriers that they were going to have a burial at sea ceremony as, I think, like 1100, and for all ships to stand by and pay homage. Well, we didn't know how many they were talking about. Well, when it came to close to 11 o'clock, the number 2 hangar deck was covered with men that had, well, they had a party the night before. They got a hold of the wrong kind of alcohol.
Oh.
Burial at sea. I think there was 12 or 13 of them.
Wow.
Yeah, they were right on number 2 elevator, and they just, that's tough.
Yeah. So you said that you were at the helm a lot, like
Pardon?
steering. You were at the wheel a lot, steering. Did you have your driver's license before doing that, or did you just, all right, I'm gonna drive this ship right now?
No, not really. Yeah, where the captain is, we were at full dress at all times. Had a cap, or regular sailor hat, a blue work shirt and trousers, but they had to be clean and neat and so forth. So when we went up on watch, or went to work, that's the way we had to look. Neat and spick and span. And that's just the way it was up on the bridge. Everybody was that way. Then I lost it. What was I saying?
About being spick and span on the bridge.
Oh yeah. We had to be clean and neat and so forth. And we stood our watches. There was, like I say, four of us. And we'd all take a turn on the wheel for an hour. and then we'd move over, and then we'd have X1 JV phones were the phones from the bridge down to steering aft, which was down in the control room, in the boiler room. And so we kept in contact that way. They couldn't do anything down below until they got permission from the captain or the lieutenant of the day, or
Okay.
because a lot of times the only way they could blow tubes out there, when I say that, I mean naturally when there's a lot of fuel, oil, or coal or whatever, they're going to have a buildup of a lot of fumes and dust and dirt and grime and so forth. Well, you can't just let that go off the stack all the time because you get spotted by other airplanes and our enemy. So they had to hold this debris or whatever we want to call it, and then they'd get permission at night, and the captain would give the order to, what was it, blow tubes. That was what they used, blow tubes. And then they would blow tubes, which meant that the air would just be black from where they've been storing all this old fuel oil. But you take all those carriers off there, the others, there's a lot of that goes up at the same time.
Yeah.
So it had to be spotty, and they looked for a night when there was clouds. And a lot of times we couldn't find any clouds, so it was really beautiful out there. So we had to do it anyhow. But we tried to be far enough away so that we wouldn't be detected.
Right. And at that time, was your radar for those kinds of, for detecting if there was anything around you still a little spotty? Like, would you know if there was somebody close to you that could spot you?
Well, yeah. They had their own submarines.
Oh, okay.
And they had us on their radar, just like we had them on our radar. And but you couldn't tell who was who. When they come up out of the water, there's nothing scarier than a submarine coming up out of the water, because there's no markings, and there's just a black thing come out of the water. And you hope it's on your side.
Oh dear.
See, who was it? The president, what's his name? Oh, Texas.
LBJ?
LBJ, yeah. LBJ. He was on the San Jacinto, which was a small carrier, and he was piloting in a TBM, a dive bomber, and he got hit. They went down. He lost his two gunners that were with him. He got out of it.
Or was that George Bush? Was that Bush?
Yeah, Bush.
Bush, yeah.
Yeah, Bush Senior. So
Right.
he's a bona fide pilot, torpedo bomber, and the other two guys that was, the plane carried 3 people, and he was the pilot, and they had 2 gunners on there.
When did you come home after the war? What day, or like what year, or
46.
46? What was that like
I
coming
couldn't
home?
even buy a beer.
That's not fun.
Well, I wasn't 21 yet.
You still didn't have your driver's license either, right?
Right. Here we are fighting the war, went through the war, and we're doing our thing out there. You go home and can't have a beer. We didn't think that was right.
No, it doesn't seem right.
So we made a new few new rules.
Something you might want to ask him about that I always thought was interesting was the diary you said you kept on the ship.
Oh, you know, I
Is that-
forgot my little diaries.
Well, the one you said you had on the back of the calendar.
Oh, I think I got that.
The pit up girl. Wrote
Yeah.
the diary on the back
They
of the
weren't
pit up.
supposed to be writing anything down.
Oh.
I had this beautiful calendar with these good-looking women on it. They didn't wear very much.
No.
I wrote on the back part of it. I wrote down every day. I think it's still in there.
Probably because nobody looked at the back of the calendar, right?
Pardon?
Because nobody looked at the back of the calendar, right? Hidden in plain sight.
That was private
Yeah.
property.
Yeah.
What would you write about? Just day-to-day stuff?
Well, okay, we rendezvoused with the task group. We got replenished by ammunition and airplane parts and food and fuel oil. Probably I just wrote that down.
Right.
Just a little more. And another time might be like when the Princeton got hit. I wrote down when the Princeton sunk right behind us last night. And things like that.
Mm-hmm. Do you look at your memorabilia a lot?
Was it what?
Your kind of your memorabilia that you have, like your
Oh.
calendars and stuff. Do you like look at that stuff a lot?
Do I look at it a lot?
Mhm. Like other than like bringing it to us and letting us see it, like do you just spend time like reminiscing with it?
There are times. The one that gets me, and I fall apart when I talk about it. The morning the Franklin got hit, there were 7 carriers that got hit that morning. And of course the Franklin was hit pretty bad. They were just ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
And a very good friend of mine from Jamestown was on it. And I tried to go and see him before we shoved off. But that didn't happen. I couldn't find him. But anyhow, we got out there and we were under attack. I forget how many planes that were shot down and how many bombs the Franklin took before it was almost useless.
Mm-hmm.
But other carriers got hit too that morning. And so the water, we were going right through where all this action was.
Mm-hmm.
And you look down on the water and all you see these guys in the water splashing and screaming and trying to find something to grab a hold of. And the one thing that I did do, and along those lines, is I had a shark knife. We all carried a shark knife.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time I really used it was when I was running across I was going to my watch, and I got up onto the flight deck, and then I saw all these guys in the water down there. And I thought, oh, jeez. And they were all looking for something to grab hold of. Well, alongside the ship, there, the only thing I can think of is a large, oversized basket, and it floats, and it's got supplies in it, and they're spotted alongside the ship. Most larger carriers would have several of those.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had to go up a little set of ladders to get to the flight deck, and these were hanging on the side of the ship right over here.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked down, and I took my shark knife, and I cut 5 of those loose. So they flipped like that. They were counterbalanced. So they went down into the water. So I like to think hopefully somebody grabbed hold of them.
Yeah.
But everybody was in such a hurry. They don't stop to think. These poor guys are already in the water.
Mm-hmm.
That really gets me. God,
Yeah.
it was terrible.
And the ship couldn't stop either for fear of submarines or anything else, too. Your ship couldn't stop, yeah, had to keep going.
Wow.
I
Did your friend from Jamestown make it, or did he pass away?
He made it.
He made it.
Wow.
He made chief, as a matter, he stayed in.
Wow.
He made chief, yeoman. As a matter of fact, he worked at a bank there for a couple of years.
What was his name, please?
Bob Morgan.
Morgan, okay.
Yeah, Robert.
Other Jamestown people make it back home? Said there were 5 of them on the Essex.
That I know of. We kind of lost track of each other because we were in different divisions and we went different ways. And we didn't get together. Bob and I were close because we went to school together.
Mhm.
We enlisted together. We went into the service together. So we were kind of close to one another. But we didn't get that close to everybody or other guys. We knew who they were, but it's hard to imagine all the different guys that you encounter, and you lose track so quickly. And I feel very fortunate of what I went through, and what I saw, and what I did. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
Really?
It was a wonderful, great experience. I'm just damn glad I came out of it alive.
Yeah.
Because it could have been a different story so quickly. That picture there with that explosion, we were all inside the pilot house when that thing hit. And the Ticonderoga, she used to operate with us, another carrier. She took 2 kamikazes, both of them right in the island structure.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, boom. I watched them both come down. And it wiped out the whole bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, you say, well, how do you control the ship when all of that is gone or shattered or whatever? Not there anymore. Well, we had what they call a place on board a ship. All ships have it, they call it steering aft.
Mm-hmm.
And it's located way back in the ship, eight decks below the water line. It's right over the screws that come out of the back of to make the vessel go. And down there is what they call the steering engines. And there are 2 engines. And these engines have to work. Well, we stood watch down there in steering aft. 1 quartermaster, 1. There was 3 of us down there, way down below the water line. Anyhow, the 2 engines were there. And what we would do is they would transfer the steerage from the bridge to steering aft, direct. So if that should happen, and it did happen to the Ticonderoga, that the bridge was knocked out, they couldn't steer it, but they could control the ship from down below and steering aft. It was just like steering a submarine. Boy, and you'd have to put 1 gear in and 1 gear out, and there you are. They say the captain's he's in charge of this up above on the bridge if he's alive. But when we go through our general quarter stations, we had to do that probably once, 2 or 3 times a week, just for practice. And what would happen would be they would shift control from the bridge to steering aft, and then you would say, stand by to steer ship from steering aft. Execute the turn, execute this, execute that. So you're down there, and you got the wheel, compass here, compass here. The admiral's got a compass, the captain's got a compass, all these guys have got compasses, and everybody's watching a compass. So you can't vary a degree hardly.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what the winds were, we learned to pick up on that steerage right away, so that we were always bucking the wind to a degree. So the wheel was always carrying 2 or 3 degrees. And then you'd have to steer from there instead of from over here.
Mm-hmm.
And you kept a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
And you're...
And if you screwed up the admiral and the captain, everybody would know you screwed up, right?
Oh, I know. I'll tell you what, you really sweat on that one.
Yeah.
But the captain, and the officer of the deck, they knew their guys. I had to be one of them. I was very fortunate. They liked the way I turned the wheel. Well, what happens, see, okay, as an example, planes are gonna take off or planes are gonna land. Either case, you have to go into the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we might be going this way, there's no wind. So we have to make wind. So the whole task group has to turn at the same time and go into the wind. And then the planes would take off and do whatever they're going to do. That got to be kind of tricky. But that's what we had to do.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing of it was, you're going to turn the ship. Now it's 800 feet long. So when you spin the wheel just a little bit, it starts going like so. Then it'll flatten out. But it's that pitch, that angle. You're standing like this. And the guys down on the flight deck are all holding the plane so they don't get shifted around on the deck or down on the hangar deck. So you had to do it fast.
Yeah.
So I could do it fast. So the officer today, he liked me.
What did you think about, though, when you're that far below water? I mean, below the water line, if anything happened to the ship, you'd be the first one to go
You better
to
believe it.
Davy Jones's locker.
That's it.
Yeah, there's no way you'd be
The
able to...
Intrepid got hit in the steering aft.
Mm.
That was the first fish she took.
Mm.
And that's in New York now.
Mm-hmm.
We have another name for that carrier, but we still associate it with a job well done. And Ronnie's wife's father was a lieutenant on the Intrepid.
That's interesting.
Dad, I thought one thing that you've told me over the years that was an interesting personal tale was it Admiral Byrd who was on the deck one night?
Oh, Admiral Byrd. Yeah.
That was you might tell that. I thought that was
Yeah.
probably one of the more interesting.
That's very good, thank you.
Well, we had normal cruising at night when we were going from one battle area to another battle area, and it's just like being on a southern cruise ship. It's beautiful out there, all the stars and the moon and everything. And so this gentleman, we knew he had observers on board because they were from the Army, the Navy, higher ups. They were just on there just to see and watch everything. Well, anyhow, this gentleman came up on the bridge where I was, and he just stood there and looked out, he was smoking the pipe, and he had a regular felt hat on. And he said, "How you doing, sailor?" "I'm doing fine, sir." He says, "It's a beautiful night, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes, sir, it is." And it was. And a little small talk like that. And he says, "I'd like to introduce myself." And so he did. He says, "My name's Admiral Byrd." And I said, "What?" "You've heard of Admiral Byrd, haven't you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I'm it." It was kind of a joking situation, but yeah, he was a nice guy. We sat and stood there and talked for quite a while. I was on watch, so and he was just standing there, but taking it all in. After I found out he was Admiral Byrd, I started shaking a little bit. Very nice gentleman. There were several occasions like that. Like we've had all of those different admirals on board that you hear about and read about.
Yeah.
They were standing right next to me. And then McCampbell, he's the air ace of aces in the Navy aviation. He shot down 34 Japanese planes, and he got the highest of all pilots in both wars. And he was just a regular guy, nice guy, but he liked his mash. He was quite a guy. He would hang out with it when we went ashore. He'd try to find out where we went. Then he'd come over and join us here right in the middle. He'd spend money like crazy. He'd buy all the drinks. They were beers, but that's more than we had.
Yeah.
That was quite an experience. Sit there and get half smashed with the air ace of aces. That's the way those things happen, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
When did you finally get your driver's license?
My driver's license?
Yeah, like when you came home. When did you finally get it?
Oh, heck, I had it before I went.
Oh, you did?
Oh, you did? Oh.
I was 16.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, no, that makes
okay.
sense.
Okay.
I didn't waste any time.
Yeah, oh, gonna get it.
So you just got your driver's license before you ended up
I
being in
didn't
charge?
get a license to steer the ship halfway around the world, but we made it.
Did good.
Yeah.
So you had brought up the lamb chops earlier.
The what?
Lamb chops?
Oh!
Is there a little story that goes with that? Or
Oh, yeah, well, we were down in the South Pacific and we were close to Australia, and we hadn't seen any, pork chops and meat, forget it, you just don't get it.
right.
Period. Well, this one day, we all got down the chow line and looked up ahead and we see this big pile. It looked like pork chops. Everybody's all excited, it's pork chops. We got up to the big pile of lamb chops. Nobody ate lamb.
Oh,
Nobody.
yeah.
That pile was that high when it started, and it was that high when it was over
Oh,
with.
jeez.
That was probably mutton, not lamb.
Yeah. Wow.
Mutton is the correct word. I wanted to be polite.
So I wanted to ask you, I'm obviously writing about you for a newspaper, or a magazine, I guess is the proper term. What do you think is the most important thing that I could write about for you?
I would emphasize and dwell on people, youngsters especially, to adapt and honor the flag.
Mhm.
That above everything else, they should honor that flag and for what it stands for. And they should know what it stands for and know the history of all the people that got killed
Mhm.
and how they got killed and why. And the reason why is what we have today. And the young people just don't grab hold of that one. And they should, if nothing else, really, really, really love that flag and just cherish it and promote it and honor it
Mhm. Okay.
in any way they can. I would dwell on that as well.
So going off of that, I should have probably asked this earlier. Why did you enlist?
Why did I?
Mhm.
For the reasons I just told you.
Right.
My dad wasn't going to let me go. My mother wasn't going to let me go. It took a lot of coaxing,
Right.
and I wanted to go and join the Marines.
Mm.
Oh yeah, be a Marine. He says, "You're going to be a sailor and like it." That was the end of the story.
Okay.
I got him to sign the papers, and I was 17.
You had said you came out of the war a different person, a better person. Could you describe that a little bit?
What?
You said you came out of the war a different person, a better person for the war. Could you describe that for us? How you changed?
Yes, I think so, because I think you value, your values change. And I think your values are so important. I think you have to really pick your values. And, well, I don't know what else to say on that line. I think it's a very, very serious subject. I wish the kids would understand that.
Could we go back for a moment to the Viking funeral? What were you thinking about as they were pushing that plane backwards and the body was there? What was going through your head as a 18, 19-year-old from Jamestown?
Well, I think because we were in the thick of it and there was so much going on, a lot of action, we were just busy defending ourselves and doing what we had to do aboard ship, that there was hardly any time for that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Except when you get older, then you start thinking about that. And I think that's very important. I'm glad I went through what I went through and came out okay. And that was close, very close. Could have been a different story altogether.
Mhm. I'm out of questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for coming back down here and talking to me about your story.
I'd like to get some pictures of you, Bill, with your son, and then some pictures of you with Abby, too, if I could. If I could get you